Hey everybody, this is Mr. Moppet coming at you with another APUS history video. This is our second video focusing in on topic 1.2, Pre-Columbian Native Societies. Last time we looked at the emergence of Mesoamerican societies such as the Mayans, the Aztecs, and the Incas located in Central and South America. Today we're going to be taking a look at Native American societies, which are going to be emerging a little bit closer to home here in what is going to be the continental United States into Canada. Now, notes, if you take a look at this map of what is North American Native American societies, you can see that there is a vast amount of tribes, nations, if you will, that are going to be existing in what is going to become the United States of America. From the Penobscot up near modern-day Maine, down to the the Apache in modern-day New Mexico, to the Chinook in modern-day Washington, to the Dakota Sioux, and with this diversity, one of the important things that we have to keep in mind is that even though these are all going to be known as Native American societies, there's going to be tremendous differences in the values, customs, migration patterns, economic, structures that they have in place as a result. Much more diversity in what's going to become the United States than what we saw in Central and South America. And a lot of that is going to be due to differences in the environment, different geographic realities that are going to, basically necessitate differences in terms of ways of life to be able to, survive, if not thrive. So, keeping that in mind, something else that we do want to be mindful of in terms of a difference between North American, or at least what is going to become, the continental United States' native nations versus other parts of the Western Hemisphere, is that these nations, these communities are going to be much smaller. It's going to be, much less population in what is going to be, the modern United States versus what's going to be found in the Aztec region or in South America where the Incas are, etc. And so that's going to just create a very different way of life. You're just not going to see big urban centers in what's going to become the United States amongst native communities, as what you saw in Tenochtitlan down with the Aztecs. And a lot of that is going to be due to the fact that the expansion of maize as a popular staple crop is just not going to be as prevalent in what's going to become American native societies as opposed to other places. Now, something that's very important to keep in mind as well when we talk about these native societies is the dynamic social relations based on gender that are going to be emerging, particularly what we call gender roles that are going to be prevalent or predominant in what's going to be Native America. Men are going to generally, in most of these communities, are going to be assigned responsibilities for hunting, which will also necessitate in the making of weapons to be successful on said hunts. So men are going to be, kind of more on, kind of have a traveling responsibility, where women are going to be more domestic in terms of their, responsibilities in the tribe, in the nation, in the family, and are going to be responsible largely for what is going to be farming in these communities, regardless of what the crop is, be it beans or corn or tobacco or whatever. You're going to see women having this kind of role, and this is going to be very interesting because one of the things that's going to lead to tensions eventually between Europeans and native societies are these different views on what gender roles are supposed to be. When we see in these native societies where women are doing the farming by and large, in Europe, that's supposed to be men's work. That's a man's responsibility, is to be doing the farming. And hunting for a typical European just didn't exist. Hunting was for the elites. Hunting was for the nobility. Hunting was a privilege, whereas in North America that just didn't exist. So understand, that these different gender roles that are going to emerge in native societies, at least vis-a-vis European societies, are going to be significant. Once again, with this tremendous diversity in terms of how they're going to be setting up their communities, setting up their economies, religions, etc. Of course, languages are also going to be part of that diversity. I mean, take a look at this. This might be your stat for the day. We're going to be seeing over 400 different languages being spoken in what is going to be Native America. So understand that, when we look at America today in the 21st century, we're a very diverse nation in terms of, what we value and to how we talk in terms of dialect. And as you can see here with Native societies, it starts there. So understand diversity has been around since day one with these, emerging societies. Once again, much more diversity in what's going to become Native America than what we'll see in Central and South America. So with an understanding that there is going to be tremendous diversity depending on what region of America you're going to be settling in as a community, as a nation, let's get into some of these different regions. The first region we're going to be taking a look at will be the Southwest. And, when we're talking about the Southwest, we're talking about what is basically down in through here, what is going to be, modern-day Arizona and New Mexico. Now, if you've never been to this part of America, it is very hot, it is very dry, it is arid. It's many parts are today desert areas, though not entirely, although it kind of gets more of a reputation for that than what is the reality. But because of the geographic, realities of that region, that's going to create a society that is going to be having, a particular way of life that is going to be, having to respond to these, climatological realities. So when we look at groups like the Pueblo and the Hohokam, for example, if you're talking about a society where it's really hot and arid and dry, you're not going to be, building, shelter in areas that are not going to shield you very well from the sun. And so you saw the creation of these cliff dwellings, as you can see pictured right here, where it keeps you out of the sun. And because it's already dry, it'll keep you cool with that covering. And note that the geography here allowed for that. You didn't see these kinds of cliff dwellings, for example, in the Great Plains, if you will, or what is going to be in modern-day Florida, if you will. So you use what the geography gives you, and you respond to what the climate is. Now, that being said, it is dry, it is arid, but it's not devoid completely of water, but you do have to be creative in how you use that water. And so, folks in the Southwest are going to have to create what is going to be pretty sophisticated irrigation systems depicted in this image right here to be able to take the limited water that is there and be able to use it for agricultural purposes. And guess what? They're going to be successful at it. So, a lot of us today think, well, how could you farm in the desert? Well, these communities did. They certainly figured out a way to do it. And note what they're going to be growing here, corn. Today when we think of growing corn, we think of, the Midwest, Ohio, for example. But you saw these communities in Arizona, New Mexico, growing corn successfully. We also saw a pretty noticeable socioeconomic stratification of the peoples in these southwestern communities based on wealth. And once again, that's something that Europeans, could certainly recognize and understand. So, and that's an important thing to keep in mind, because once again, with this tremendous diversity amongst these communities, some of these communities are going to have much more of a communal sense of sharing wealth. Others much more socially stratified. Now, if we take a look to the northwest of what's going to become the United States, and when we kind of talk about the northwest, we're kind of talking about from what is going to be Alaska, British Columbia, into modern-day Washington, Oregon, even Northern California. This is a different kind of climate. It's going to be much more temperate, but it is going to be having much more precipitation up there compared to the Southwest. And these are going to be folks that are going to be along the Pacific coast, unlike the folks in the Southwest. So with that in mind, be aware that, these folks are not going to be using cliff dwellings, because you don't have to worry about staying out of the hot sun. It doesn't get real hot up in, Oregon, for example. So you don't have to worry about that. And so they're going to create, different types of dwellings known as longhouses. And longhouses will be popular in other regions as well. But as you can see here in this longhouse, this can be used as, a pretty sizable location to house a number of different residents. It can also be used for religious gatherings, political meetings, things like that. And note what you're using here. Unlike the Southwest, where they didn't have much access to wood, up in the Northwest, they have plentiful amount of access to wood, so you can use that to your advantage to create this kind of a dwelling. Obviously, if you are along the coast, fishing is going to be a major staple. And note, folks, along the Northwest coast, because the fishing is going to be so easy, relatively speaking, there's not going to be as much of a desire to, engage in what is going to be, subsistence farming that you would see in the Southwest. Something else that is going to be characteristic of the Northwestern communities will be the use of totem poles, as you can see depicted here. Totem poles are generally going to be constructed along familial lines. In other words, a certain family within that community will have a certain lineage, a certain history, accomplishments, stories, tall tales, myths, if you will. They'll be associated, and those are depicted in these totem poles. Once again, diversity of geography, distance and time will create different values in terms of, how do you communicate your history, for example. And note in the Northwest in particular, due to its location west of the Cascades, west of the Rocky Mountains, they're going to be a little bit more isolated than many of these other regions. Now, if you go to the east, you are going to be moving into what is going to be the Great Plains region of what's going to be eventually the United States. So you're talking about, folks like the Cheyenne and the Dakotas and others right in here. And note, you're not on the coast, so fishing is not going to be plentiful. It's not desert landscape like in the Southwest particularly. It's a vast grassland. And so you're going to be, using that geographic reality to try to become successful in terms of gathering food and just surviving. So because of the flat landscape, you're going to see a lot of these communities be very nomadic in nature. They're not going to be sedentary. They're certainly not going to be urban. So they're going to be kind of, moving to different parts around the region, using whatever resources are available, and then just kind of move on. And there's going to be extensive, desire to follow the paths of the buffalo. Buffalo, remember, is one-stop shopping for Native Americans in this region. This is where you get food. This is where you get tools. This is where you get clothing. This is where you get shelter. Everything that you need is right there. Think of Buffalo in these times as kind of woolly Costco's. Everything you need under one roof. But you have to be able to follow these buffalo. You have to be able to catch them. So you can't be sedentary. You can't have dwellings that are going to have a lot of permanence to them. You got to be mobile. And that's going to explain the creation of teepees as a common type of shelter. Easily constructed, easily deconstructed, easily transportable to go where you need to go. Now, in addition to that, you're going to see communities emerging in the southeast, focused primarily on hunting and growing corn. That's going to be primarily in what is going to be the modern day southeast United States, Choctaw, Chickasaw, etc. And then we get into the northeast. Once again, also you're talking about a lot of hunting, some farming. Although we get into the far northeast, like the Narragansett, not as much because the soil's not so great. Use of longhouses, like as we saw before, longhouses tend to kind of keep you warm. But we did see also in the northeast the creation of what's going to be an important political entity, the Iroquois Confederation, which is going to be a political and military alliance amongst many of the tribes in what's going to be the New York region. So once again, the idea of political alliances and military alliances, that's, going to be common in this part of America. So we're going to go ahead and leave it there for now. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.